When a patient is admitted to the hospital, today we have made many changes. But when a patient would come to the hospital, the nurse or the clerk would be sitting in a very comfortable chair with a table in front of them where they make notes. Have you ever observed what the patient was doing? They're not feeling well, and they're standing up. No consideration for the patient to make them comfortable. But the staff is comfortable. That is being system-focused, not patient-focused. So when you go back to your hospital, spend a few minutes in the outpatient department. Observe the patients when they get their medication and see yourself, are we patient-focused or are we system-focused?
And that's really clear. And our homework to look at our hospital. And the answer for this situation, Tony said that the beautiful courtyard is just useless for the patient because it has a bench that prevents the people from coming in to use that beautiful facilities. And that's we don't think of how can we use this to make the people, to make the patient relax or use the nature to heal the patient.
I forgot the name of that hospital, but I remember they had a beautiful courtyard. And then there were signs, do not walk on it. Well, what's the purpose of having that courtyard? It was there for the patients to enjoy, not to make the hospital look beautiful.
And most of the time that we visit the hostel will arrange a beautiful big flower on the table. And that's the opportunity for Tony to comment something about the flower.
When we look at the hospital as a whole, we have many different functions. You have the nursing, you have the diagnostic unit, you have the pharmacy, you have the physicians, you have the housekeeping staff, you have the maintenance staff, and how well do they appreciate one another? So if I would ask you, you take that off, take this slide off. If I asked you, what did you see on that slide? What was it? What did you see? Anyone? Were there a few dogs on there? Or maybe a few cats? Or what did you see? You saw flowers, didn't you? Then, what were the colors of the flowers? Were there only flowers that you saw? Were there any leaves in there? What held the flowers together? Did you notice that there was a vase? And how did the vase keep on standing? Did you notice there was a foot on it, the bottom part? This is what the hospital is like. Sometimes we see only the flowers, but we do not see all the other units that keep the flowers together. That's why it is so important not to be isolated and say, this is our function, because you cannot do what you're supposed to do unless you have the support of the others. So if you consider yourself to be one of the roses in there, that's good. If you consider yourself to be one of the leaves in there, that is good. People will see that. But oftentimes, you need, or we all need the support of the diagnostic units. You don't see the diagnostic units. Often, we are dependent on the housekeeping. Can you imagine if we didn't have any housekeeping in the hospital? The infection rate would just go sky high. How does the equipment that you use, how is it being maintained? Have you ever considered the maintenance staff, that they are part of holding up the flowers? They are part of the organization, and we cannot do without them. We are dependent on one another. And if you look at it that way, you will change your mind. You will change your mindset that I'm here to do my job. No, you're there to look at it globally and to work together with the other people to accomplish your goals. That is real quality.
And then at lunchtime when we walk into the room, we saw a table with food on the table. And in the afternoon, then Tony make a comment about the table.
At the start of the accreditation program, I did use a lot of metaphors to explain how dependent we are upon one another. If you see a table in front of you and it has food on it, what happens if one of the legs would fall off? The whole thing collapses. So we are dependent on the legs. We are dependent on the cloth that is over the leg, and certainly we are dependent upon the food, because if the food wasn't on the table, we didn't need the table at all. Gotcha?
And you make the 4 leg you compare with the 1 leg is the administrator at all level, and the second one is the doctor, and the third one is the other professional, and the last one is the support staff. And most of the time that the support staff will be forgotten, right? And you try to convince the hospital that we have to give importance to all these kind of staff.
I had forgotten all those things.
And you also say something that very, very interesting, that as leader we must build up respect, and we must exchange our power for respect and gain authority, or we have to give up our power. This will you talk to the administrator of the hospital.
When you have power, you can make people do what you want them to do, if you have power. But if you have authority, then people want to do what you want to have done. And forgive me, but I have to use our beloved king as an example. The king of Thailand does not have power. But wow, does he or did he have a lot of authority? People want to do what he wanted to have done. Look at all the projects in the north that the king supported. People, just because the king asked, they wanted to do it. And in the hospital, it is the same thing. The medical director If they have power, they can make people do what they want them to do. But inside the heart of people, the inner power of people is not with them. We have to give up. As individuals, we have to learn to give up our power in order to gain respect and to gain authority. Quality is not possible by telling people what to do. Quality is only possible by having people wanting to do that. Because you as an individual, at any level of the organization, has diminished your power, gained respect, and gained authority. That's the way you get things done. That's the way towards accreditation.
Thanks for giving us the different meaning of power and authority. But we are still afraid that we have fear to give up our power. How can we change our behavior in giving up, not to use power and to gain authority, and how we can get that authority?
I remember when I was a young man, and when I finished my training, I became the administrator of the first hospital. And I thought that I had a lot of power. I was the administrator, and I was going to dictate to people that they must provide quality. And the first thing I learned was I cannot do that on my own. I need the support and the commitment of other people. That's when I start to learn how to work as a team. And you had the management team. Together we made the decision. I gave up that power. And I gained respect because I valued the contribution other people made to the organization. You're not by yourself. You cannot do it by yourself. If you try, you will fail. Unless you have the power and force the individuals to do, but with their inner power, they don't want to do it. And you lose respect, and you lose the authority. Who cares about power? You'll never accomplish your goals if you use power rather than authority.
Okay. Then we get out of the building to the many hospitals have a beautiful garden. And Tony talked about watering of the garden, watering of the plant.
In the hospital setting, who do you pay attention to? And you ask yourself, when I walk into the hospital, which individuals do I value? Which individuals have the same goal as what I have? Which individuals work together with me to accomplish that goal? And it is the same as in a garden. You have a bunch of plants and you water the plants. You don't water one plant until it rots away, and you don't, or you neglect to water another plant and it dries up. So you have to look at the organization and to see where moisture is needed, where help is needed. and where you can contribute to the well-being of the individual. This is, you can use a garden as being system-focused as well. Because why are you watering the garden? Is to make things grow and to make things beautiful. Why are you watering the patient? Or why are you watering your colleagues? It is to make them better. Always look at the other person. What can I do to make them perform better?
Anthony brought us around the hospital, walking through all the area that sometimes the management may not be exposed to. And in the corridor of the hospital, we met with a group of nursing students. And Tony asked them what will happen if there's a fire accident on the building. And the nursing student cannot answer. And we think that it's not the duty of it's not the duty of the nursing student to answer those kind of questions. So I asked Tony why you asked the nursing student that kind of question.
Well, ask yourself the question. If you walk in your hospital and you ask someone, if a patient has a cardiac arrest, what would you do? And if the individual says, well, that's not my responsibility, that's not my area, that says something about the leadership in the hospital. It shows a direct neglect of communication. Everyone in the hospital ought to know how to react when a fire occurs. Every individual in the hospital ought to know what to do when there is a terrorist attack. Everybody in the hospital ought to know when there is a flood or a fire in the hospital. How do we communicate? How do we get people ready? This is all part of quality. Is it safe for the patient, and not only the patient, but is it safe for the staff to work in that environment? Oh, the foundation. So often, I would ask management, the medical director or the management team, to go along with me to make some observations of what goes on in the hospital. And then we would go down to the maintenance department. And sometimes management admit that they have never been there. And then I would ask the maintenance staff, why are you here? What's the purpose of you being here? And sometimes they say, well, we repair things when the requisition comes down. Then I asked, how do you prevent the requisitions coming down? What is your preventative maintenance program like? And then the management team looked at me. Why are you asking those questions? Well, we're talking about quality. We're talking about safety for the patient. And then I explained to the maintenance staff, I asked them the question, we have this hospital. What holds the hospital up? What is it that prevents the hospital from collapsing? And then we draw a picture. And we have the hospital as a building, and it rests on the foundation. What happens if the foundation crumbles, the hospital will collapse. And then I use the metaphor. The maintenance staff is the foundation of the hospital. You are the ones that make sure that there is no cracks in the foundation. You are the ones that keep the physical facilities in tip-top shape so that the medical staff and the nursing staff can do their job in a safe way. You are very important in the provision of quality of care. If you fail, and if you don't do your job, the hospital will collapse. The medical staff, the nursing staff, the diagnostic staff won't be able to carry out their functions unless they have a facility that is conducive to the work that they have to do. So when you go back to the hospital and you see a maintenance personnel, think about it, how important they are for you to do your job. You cannot do it by yourself. You need the support of all the other people within the hospital.
You see that Tony can try to convince that the people at our unit are very important for quality of patient care, and not. I'm afraid that nowadays we are going in the wrong direction. That we are trying to teach them what is quality and to make them doing some work, some paperwork for quality, and that may not be the purpose of what we are trying to communicate with them. How important they are as a foundation of the building, and this metaphor is very, very, very important for all of us. I think. Suppose that we go up the Bayok Tower, the top floor of Bayok Tower, and Tony said.
I sometimes observe, especially in the public hospital, that the medical director is very concerned about the Ministry of Health to make sure that everything the ministry wants is addressed. And they do not look at the other things. And I